Communications. We are here to interview Father John Correa, the Parish Priest, Holy Ghost Cathedral. Father, can you start by introducing yourself first and telling us about your background?
Right, thank you. I'm Father John Correa. It's really, the full name is John Bosco Correa. And I was born in Nairobi on the 11th of August, 1941. So I went to school, primary school in Nairobi, and I finished at St. Teresa's Boys' School in Eastleigh, where I eventually taught as a teacher. And from then onwards, it was the issue of the vocation. There was a priest called Father Patrick Hannon, the principal of the school, who started advising me about the vocation. So eventually, after a lot of reflection, about 2 years, I eventually said yes to the proposal. I made a decision. So I was sent to Rome for studies by our first bishop, who accepted me. Our first bishop, Bishop Eugene Butler, was my parish priest in Nairobi, St. Francis Xavier's Parklands. So he knew me and the family quite well, and when I applied, he accepted me because he had no vocations at that time. So in 1961, he sent me to Rome for studies at the Pontifical Collegio Urbano di Propaganda Fide, where I studied philosophy for 3 years, finishing with a licentiate, and then 4 years of theology, also finishing with a licentiate. And then I came back for ordination, first to the diaconate, and then I was ordained in Nairobi because of the family at the Holy Family Cathedral at that time. The ordination was on the 22nd of December 1968. So therefore, this year I'm celebrating 50 years of my ordination.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Who were your parents and how did they find themselves in Kenya?
My parents were in Kenya. Let's say my grand-uncle first came to Kenya, and he got my father here, and my father eventually married and started off a family in Nairobi, mainly in Nairobi. So they were the backbone of my vocation, bringing myself and 5 sisters. I'm the third born in the family, 5 sisters. And they did a lot for the faith, our faith, and also our education. The rest of the family are spread throughout the world. My sisters are all married except one, and therefore some of them will be coming here for the event in December.
You said a family of 5 sisters?
5 sisters and 1 son, the only son. I'm the only son in the family.
Okay. Now, during your ordination, were you alone, or how many were you? And are they still in priesthood?
Now, I was alone, and I was ordained by the nuncio at that time because our bishop was away, and he arranged that I'll be ordained in Nairobi, because that's where I was born and grew up and where people knew me. I was hardly known in Mombasa at that stage. I only came to Mombasa in 69, early 69, after ordination. Yeah. So my parents, the family have been Catholics for almost 300 years according to the records we have of our great-grandparents. So it's a long history of Christianity.
And can you take us through your journey into priesthood, the seminaries you've been to?
Yeah. Now, the seminary was in Rome, and one of the biggest obstacles was language. The studies were in Latin initially, but eventually they changed to Latin, and to Italian. So Italian was the common language in the college where I lived with. In our class, there were people from 60 nations, and we still keep contact with those who are surviving all over the world. In Australia, one just died recently in the UK, India, Vietnam, Japan, and so on. Yeah. So it was tough as far as the studies were concerned in a strange language, but there was a good library where there were books in English, so that after the lectures I found what was necessary to understand what was being taught in class. So it was a double kind of challenge after every session in the university where I went to, Collegio Urbano Pontifical Urbanianum College in Rome. Yeah.
And upon your ordination, which places have you worked?
Yeah. Now, after coming here to Mombasa, the first appointment was in Giriama. So my bishop, that time Bishop Butler, says, go to Giriama, but it is a temporary appointment. We'll take you somewhere else. And then that somewhere else was in Mgangenyika, but that was 69, but it did not last long. I was transferred again to Malindi to take over the parish at a young age and also lack of experience. But I managed to do what was necessary, and I was alone in Malindi. But eventually Father Jamie Lynch came and assisted me, and in fact he took over because our bishop gave me a special assignment to look for a possibility of splitting up this huge parish of Malindi. So I got a plot in a place called Marafa across the river Sabaki, and but before I could settle down to anything, again I was transferred to Voi. From 1972, I was in Voi for 13 years. For some reason, the bishop did not, it was now Bishop Nicodemus Kirima, my second bishop, who just left me there, although I said it's time to move. Eventually, he agreed that I go for studies. And my studies, strange enough, was in liturgy. So I was sent to a university in Belgium, a famous university, Leuven, or Louvain, as many people call it in the French language. So I spent 2 years there, where I did a master's mainly in sacramental theology, and it's all mixed up with liturgy. And then I came back to the diocese. And again, Bishop Kirima gave me an option of 3 places where I could go to. So I chose Mwatate, to work in Mwatate again for a few months. It was very unsettling. And then he told me eventually, I want you to go and teach in St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary. And he says, I've arranged an interview for you. So in short, I went for the interview, I got through, and I started working, teaching in St. Thomas Aquinas seminary in 1986, the middle of 1986. So I was in Bura for a few months. So I spent 6 years in St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary, where I finished as Dean of Students. Then I got a sabbatical. I went and worked in Australia, in Melbourne and Sydney, these two cities, and then with the money I received, I bought a ticket to work in America, in California. So I spent a number of months over there, and eventually I came back to the diocese, where I worked in Makupa as an assistant of Father Mwatela. Now after that, I was sent to Ramisi, where I spent 8 years in Ramisi. And it was a huge parish, 18 outstations, and it was getting a bit too much for me, for the body. So now I was dealing with the third bishop now, Bishop John Jenga. So I prepared him by telling him that this place is too big and I should be out of the place by a given time. So after the year 2000, I was moved to Mombasa. And he asked me to take over Luanga Communications. So I'm one of those many who took over from Sister Maggie. You could say she was the founding person over there, and I spent about 2 years at Luanga Communications. Yeah, so what I can say was that I did a lot for the newsletter to publish it regularly in English and Kiswahili, and at that time we were selling in all the parishes, or most of the parishes, about 500 copies per month. So that brought an income to the Luanga Communications from that effort. And I worked with Bettina Kanaka and also Lillian Japan. We were in the same office, so it was a team to do a lot of things together, and preparing ordinations, there's booklets for ordinations. There were ordinations regularly at that time, 2 or 3 or 4, and it was quite a taxing moment to get information and then print it in color, which was done in Nairobi, and then we had the copies brought here, and we were selling it again, although some people disagreed with the sale of those things, but it had to be done because there was quite a effort, financial effort put into that to recover that money. So it was obvious that we could not give it out freely. Yeah.
Good. So after that, you went to the Bosco Cathedral?
No, there's still. Now we come to the fourth bishop. Bishop Lele came into the diocese after the retirement of Bishop Jenga, and he found me as an assistant in Tudor Parish for some time. Then I continued in Luanga Communications. Then I think he appointed somebody else. Bettina Kanaka took over from me, and I was living with Bishop Lele and doing work in various parishes, like in around Topanga, Kongowea, where Mbungoni did not exist. So these were outstations where I could help on a Sunday. Until the time, it's coming to 10 years now, that Bishop said, I'm now sending you to the Holy Ghost Cathedral, where I found Monsignor Rua here, and Monsignor Rua was transferred to Mikindani. So I took over at that time, and you're sure you still find me here today, after all those years, coming to 10 years now. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, Father, what would you describe as your biggest challenges as priests?
The challenges go in phases. In the earlier stages, when I was working like in charge of Malindi, the challenges were not knowing the procedures, say when it comes to marriages and all that. So I had to learn the hard way, looking at books, asking other priests who were missionaries, and they helped me to overcome all those obstacles, because there were lots of marriages, mixed marriages, and I hadn't a clue about how to go about it. So that was one about procedures, administrative procedures in the parish. All right, now money is always an issue in any parish. There isn't sufficient money to run the parish, and where I was, we were struggling. Even in Malindi, where some people think that there was a lot of money, that the challenge was to look for money and to survive with the money you got from the Christians. Now, that went on and on. The big challenge about money, finances, was in Ramisi, where I had 18 outstations. So I trained them about self-reliance, about their responsibilities to own the church. So eventually, when we had the parish council meeting, I would get about 25 to 30,000 shillings to run the parish for a month. The biggest expenditure was the car. Now, when I went to Ramisi, I was given a car which was breaking down all the time. And I was in Mombasa trying to mend it, so money was being used for that car. And the mechanic was telling me, "Father, hiyo gari imechoka." So through a friend of mine who came to visit me and he saw the conditions, a German friend of mine, he says, "I'll go back, I don't promise you anything, but we'll see what we can do." So after almost 3 years, out of the 8 years I was there in Ramisi, I got money to buy a brand new Toyota Hilux, a pickup. And I was very happy with it. Now that was really a personal car, and I told the people that if I move with the car, so you better be prepared for any eventuality. So somebody else helped me to put a body around the car so that people could sit inside. I could carry material for building, because I was building a lot in that area. Yeah. So that came to an end after the year 2000, and I came to Mombasa. So while at Luanga Communications, I was looked after. I had no financial issues. I was getting my allowance, and there was no issue at all about money until I came here. Now, as you know, the church is approaching a centenary, and there is need for a thorough refurbishment of this church. Last year we started with the roof, and it amounted to 5.6 million, which we got from our parishioners. They were with me, and we got that money not very easily, but eventually we paid the contractor that amount. So we had no debts. But now we are on a second phase at the moment. We are renovating the priest's residence, and the office is below. As you can see, it's being painted. And then eventually the grounds will have to be done up, the grounds outside. There are volunteers who have done a lot of landscaping around, especially around the wall, and it's looking a bit colorful with flowers and all that. But the exterior of the church, the interior of the church will have to be done eventually. The painting and removing all that what is caused by pollution on the walls of the church. It is looking black and shabby, but eventually we'll have to clean it up. Our neighbors here at Ambalal House, some years ago, the non-Christians, they said, we are going to clean the outside of the church with water blasting, high pressure water, to remove all that darkness which was there accumulating because of pollution. And they did that. It was looking very nice, but now we are back to square one again if you look at the exterior of the building. So those are challenges for me and whoever comes here. It's ongoing. A church which is 100 years old needs a lot of attention here and there.
Sure. And what would you say have been your happiest moments as a priest?
I must say that in the earlier days, with the priests, especially living in Voi, every Sunday we met in one of the parishes, Bura, Mwatate, or even Wundanyi. We met for a meal there, and even Sagala. And we had a meal, we had a good relationship, and we drove back home in the middle of the night. It was safe at that time. The roads were good, except the road to Bura was about what it is a few months ago. And the road to Wundanyi was fairly well. It was a new road when I came to Voi. It was a brand new road. I even know the one who, an Australian person who constructed the road. So the challenges in the parish is the car and the maintenance of the car. If the car was new, less maintenance. But if the car was old, like my experience in Ramisi, it needed constant attention in the form of repairs to the car. And the people could not afford even to buy a tire at that time. The tires were expensive. So anyway, we managed. So in the midst of all these challenges, I think I was fairly happy working with the people, like especially in Voi. I built a number of churches there. I'm boasting now in the outstations in Bololo. They are still standing. The house in Voi was built by me and then later on extended by Father Mwakiwiwi. So I've left landmarks here and there. It's not the best, but those are things that stand, and people say, we built it with Father Correa. They don't say it is Father Correa's church, because they put a lot of effort into the building. It was building, collecting stones and sand, and then a lot of work together, putting the slab and all that. I remember all that, especially in Tausa, what we did with a few Christians. In general, there are always few who help. The others come in when things are complete. They'll pass by and say, Wakristo wanajenga, Wakatoliki wanajenga kanisa hapa, lakini baadaye tutakuwa hapa. And that's what they do. Here we have a community from all over Kenya and even externally, and some of them are here temporarily, so they don't own the church. So the big effort here and everywhere is for people to accept, to own the church and support the church in whatever projects there are. And with their help, there is no other way we can look for funds elsewhere. Those days of looking for funds outside are all gone, I think.
Father, now before we conclude, now you talk of landmarks. Which particular landmarks can you talk of that can dot the path of the priesthood?
Now, when I went to Voi, the house was semi-permanent. So it was being eaten by termites, the timber. So at that time, Father Tom Barron was a procurator. So I came to him and I said that I need to have some money to put up a new house. And if I remember right, he gave me some 30,000 shillings. And he told me, this is not enough, but surely you know what to do to find the rest. So I put a new house in Voi, permanent building. Then I also extended the church in Voi. It was very small and the numbers were growing. So I put 2 wings, it became cruciform. Then in the outstations in Mkwachuni, Bololo, Tausa, we put up buildings. And I started off even in Rongeju, and eventually somebody else completed those buildings. It's not that I started from zero, from scratch, and completed everything. It's only the house in Voi and the church in Voi which I can say that I did. Then in Ramisi, same thing, we started putting foundations, and then eventually, because there were challenges about money there, so eventually I think somebody else finished those buildings, mainly churches. But I tried to have endless seminars with parish council leaders. There was a lot of confusion in these parishes outside. The chairman was keeping the money. The treasurer had no access to the money, nor the books. So we had to put some order in all these outstations, that who does what. So that takes a lot of time and effort. And with the assistance of other priests from outside, I think eventually the parish council and the church council understood their roles, their respective roles, in what they should be doing as a church council or a parish council. So I'm quite happy with that, because previously I saw, when I went there, there was a lot of chaos in a number of parishes. And slowly I think that the people took over from there, and other priests came there and built on the foundations which were there. Yeah.
And finally, Father, what advice can you give to up and coming priests?
Before you say that, my interest in many places was for vocations. Like I spent 13 years in Voi, and I spent a lot of time sending young boys to Kwale Seminary, thinking that one of them will eventually decide. That didn't happen. It was not God's time. But eventually, Mwakiki have their own priest now, with Joram, Father Joram Mlekenyi. Okay, and we don't know about the others. There are priests coming here and there, whether somebody influenced them or not. There is always an influence from a priest in the background, directly or very indirectly. So really, that was a big challenge for me, and in a way, I could say that it ended in a failure. I got nobody to go to the to the seminary to start the journey to the priesthood. Okay, so those are the challenges you face. But then eventually you realize that it is not you as a person; it is God who calls, and then there is somebody else who responds, like in the case of any priest here.
Now back to the advice to up and coming priests.
It's very difficult to give advice to others. Now, first and foremost, I think every young priest must know what he has offered himself as. Yeah. The bottom line is service to the people. And when the priest is available to the people, I think the Christians are happy. Wherever you see priests, the priest is happy and the Christians are happy. But then when the murmuring starts that the priest is not available, is not found, then there is something wrong. So I think all of us, young or old, we must always remind ourselves we are in a parish to serve the people. Even if it is a small thing, like it happens here in the office, somebody drags you out of the office, bariki tasbih yangu. It is still a service. There were some priests who were complaining, they said, what am I doing in this office, only blessing rosaries? So the man was not aware of what he was in the office for. The office here is very taxing, because you have to listen to Christians and non-Christians about the challenges they are facing. We don't ask people what is their religion when they come here. We only ask them, what parish do you belong to? Because we can have too many people who belong to parishes and they are offloading their burdens on us. And that is not fair. We cannot really do the job of some other parish priest. So we eventually persuade them to go back to their parishes and talk to the priests. But if there is a problem in communication, we still listen to them. Myself and the other 3 priests who are here.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant interview.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dear viewers,
Yeah.
that is Father John Correa talking to us
Thank you.
through his priesthood of the 50 years since he was ordained as a priest. Thank you.
Thank you.